losing our Heisman finalist quarterback in the national championship game to falling off a cliff the very next season. Taysom Hill running for over 300 yards and having 6 touchdowns in 2 meetings. Watching one of the worst teams in program history in 2015, seeing them get blown out by TCU 50-7. Losing to lowly Kansas not once but twice in a 5-year span. Losing 5 games in a row, games where we had second half leads in. As Texas fans, we've been through a lot. The program has been through a lot. And it still feels like the perception of the program is in a bad spot, even though they just made the college football playoffs. Some people still don't see Texas as being a legit team. Maybe I'm just thinking of the trolls, but even college football analysts and pundits didn't give Texas the credit they deserve this season. I want to refrain from using the words Texas is back because that's more of a for clicks and baits type of thing. But to answer the question, yes, Texas is back. But that's not why I'm here in this video. The point of this video is to highlight the journey that Texas has been on in the Steve Sarkisian era, going from 5-7 to 1 play away from playing in the national championship game. I want to talk about what changed over the course of those 2 years. Of course, I could go back 15 years and talk about it, but the video would be an hour long. So we'll just stick with specifically the Sark era. We'll look at how specifically the culture changed, how it culminated in such a successful 2023 season, and we will project a little bit as to what's in store for Texas moving forward. After firing Tom Herman, the Longhorns program was in bad shape. We didn't know how to play up to competition with consistency, we didn't know how to overcome adversity, and there was a sense of entitlement of simply just being at the University of Texas, and I'm talking coaches and players. I don't even blame Breece Hall for saying that their matchup versus Texas was 5-star players versus 5-star culture. He was right. 5-star players can only take you so far, as those qualities aren't even put onto display if everything else leading up to the game is not at a 5-star level. Stuff like coaching, preparation, discipline, accountability are all things that can nullify high-end talent if not exercised correctly. At Texas, those things I just mentioned were not done at a high level at all. That is the type of environment Steve Sarkisian had to walk into and take over, and at the time, a good amount of Texas fans, including myself, were skeptical that he was the guy for the job. And Sark had never really broken through as a head coach. Yeah, at Washington, he did inherit a winless team and made them a perennial 7-8 win team. He capped out over there, took over the USC job, trying to build something great there, but not even a year and a half in, he was gone. We all know why, no reason to go back into that. So he was out of a head coaching job for a while, but he had been an analyst as well as an offensive coordinator. At first went to Bama as an analyst, went off to the Falcons for the OC job, and found his way back to Bama after a couple years. Fast forward to 2021, he gets a Texas job and he has to fix all the problems left from the previous decade failure. And it looked promising at first. They started out 4-1, although that loss at Arkansas was an ugly one. A quarterback change from Hudson Card to Casey Thompson right after that game seemed to change everything. And there was actually a stretch where Casey Thompson had 27 drives with the offense, including 24 scores, 22 of them being touchdowns. All that culminated in a 70-35 beatdown of Texas Tech, as Casey Thompson's stat line looked like this. It seemed as if Sark was off to a great start in his first year as the head coach. They were 4-1, up 28-7 against OU, and then this happens. You know the rest. Caleb Williams and OU came storming back, ended up winning that game 55-48 on pretty much the last play of the game, and that started a really nasty downward trend for the Longhorns for the rest of that season. And it also spilled over into the 2022 and 2023 seasons as well. But in 5 of the last 7 games in 2021, Texas had a lead and found a way to lose every single one of them. They had double-digit second-half leads in 2 of those 5 games. It seemed as if the problems that occurred under Tom Herman was happening under Sark, but in a different form. Things would be going great, but then one thing would inevitably go wrong, and that started a snowball effect for the entire team imploding. That was a sign of poor leadership, because when a team has strong leadership, the guys are calmed down, they end up stopping the bleeding and come up with a counter to the adversity they're facing. The all gas, no brakes mentality that Sark had brought to Texas was nowhere to be found at the time. On top of that, there were a lack of in-game adjustments from Sark, who was still learning how to be a head coach again after being out of it for so long. Obviously, game management stuff, clock management stuff were things that he was kind of rusty at, and that showed that season. All in all, Texas finished with a disappointing 5-7 record, and they had some real soul searching to do. All of that included a notable moment that I think changed the culture. After a 30-7 loss at Iowa State, where it looked like the guys literally had nothing left in the tank, Texas D-line coach at the time, Bo Davis, had an infamous bus rant where he scolded the team, alluding to some guys not taking the loss with the seriousness it deserved and having a goofy attitude afterwards.
It's real! Some of you motherfuckers need to get in the transfer portal. You wanna go? Get in the motherfucker! This shit ain't a game to me. And if you think it's a game, get the fuck off of this bus. I got my ass kicked. And you motherfuckers wanna laugh? That's fucking real. You think it's a goddamn joke? And some of you motherfuckers do transfer out of this motherfucker.
Ironically, the guy who triggered that scolding was T'Vondre Sweat, a guy who was a big part of the culture change and became one of the best players in college football in 2023. He admitted to laughing on the bus right before Bo Davis snapped, but Davis was right. There were just some guys that just didn't care about winning as much as they should. Not saying T'Vondre Sweat wasn't, but that's just what it was. 22 players transferred out that offseason. Sark took a deep dive into the program and let some of that dead weight go, as well as bringing in guys who not only fit the scheme, but also fit the culture along with it. This obviously culminated in Quinn Ewers coming to Texas after leaving Ohio State, and a few huge recruits that became immediate impacts right away, guys like Kelvin Banks, guys like Terrence Brooks. Year 2 looked promising in the early stages as the Horns took on Bryce Young and Alabama in a game where many thought Texas would get destroyed at home as they were a 20-point underdog. That narrative quickly shifted to if Texas had Quinn Ewers the whole game, they would have beat Bama. Texas ended up losing 20-19, and of course Ewers got hurt in the first quarter of that game. He started off 9 for 12, 134 yards, hit a deep ball to Worthy. He was on fire, and you could see the talent just oozing out of him at that time. However, another thing that plagued Texas over the years was guys not making big plays when big plays were needed. And that was kind of something we were learning how to do in 2022. An example of that was when Texas was up 19-17. Late, Bryce Young was taking Alabama down the field. Texas dials up the perfect corner blitz from Ryan Watts that if it got home to Bryce Young, he would have been sacked at around the 43-yard line with like 30 seconds left. And who knows, Alabama probably doesn't even get a field goal attempt to win that game. Instead, Bryce Young scrambles out of that, takes the ball 20 yards down the field, and setting up an easy game-winning field goal for Will Reichert. To be fair, that was a great play by Bryce Young, but there were too many instances over the years that the other team made the great play and Texas didn't. That had to stop. There's no such thing as moral victories at Texas, but that game specifically, you had to feel good about it because 20-point underdog against Bama, you have your backup quarterback in the game for most of the game, and you lose on a game-winning field goal pretty much. And a lot of people started to think that Texas was probably ahead of schedule and a better team than even the preseason expectations suggested. But all those sentiments came crashing down in week 4 against Texas Tech, losing on the road 37-34 in overtime. And it was like, oh, here we go again type of feeling around the Texas fan base and program. We got in our own way and let bad moments snowball again. The team was no doubt better in 2022, but there was a higher expectation set after that Bama loss. If we were able to play at that level we did against Bama without our starting quarterback for most of the game, you should be able to beat teams like Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, right? Nope. The 2021 play I was talking about still plagued the team in 2022, but to a lesser degree. The Longhorns in 4 Big 12 games had double-digit second-half leads and found a way to lose 2 of them, and the other 2 came down to a turnover and a final possession. Eerily similar to 2021, but the guys slowly but surely started to find ways to win as the season went along. A far cry from finding ways to lose such games like Alabama and Texas Tech. All in all, the season was not a total disappointment, but like I said, the preseason expectations are one thing, but when you give us evidence that you're better than those preseason expectations, the expectations are going to rise. And when you don't hit those expectations, then it can be seen as a disappointment. However, in the grand scheme of things, knowing that your team was a 5-win team last year and Sark was building something special, you did have to be pleased with the outcome. 2023 was a culmination of all the things that needed to be improved at Texas. We stopped playing up and down the competition for the most part. We played for each other, even though there were 3 games that looked like deja vu from the first 2 seasons. But the difference was we knew how to win. In the Alabama game in 2023, there were 3 examples of our guys showing the type of mental toughness that was absent in the program for so long. In the first quarter, Xavier Worthy drops a wide open touchdown off a great play call by Sark. We had to settle for a field goal. In the second quarter, he makes up for it with a 44-yard touchdown over the shoulder catch. Second example, in the third quarter, as Bama made their run, Jaron Thompson gave up a 49-yard bomb, letting Jermaine Burton run right by him. The very next play he sees the field, he responds with a pick that leaves Texas with great field position. The third example is freshman edge rusher Anthony Hill goes too far upfield on a rush, I think sometime in the third quarter, opened up a lane for Milroe to run, and he gains an easy first down off of that. Later in the fourth, he fakes as if he's going upfield and spins back inside and gets a sack on Milroe, which pretty much sealed the deal as Bama didn't get the ball back. You might say, yeah, it's sports. Of course it's going to be filled with ups and downs. But for Texas, there was too many times, more often than not, that on those down moments, it stayed as down moments. It didn't go back up like a roller coaster would. It just stayed at a down moment, and that's why we're able to blow so many games and just lose so many games over the past decade and a half. We didn't respond, and for our guys to respond in the way that they did on the road at Bama, winning by 10, it let me know that this team was different, and I was right. However, there were 3 games against Houston, Kansas State, and TCU where we needed 3 big plays to survive each of those games that we very well could have ended up losing. Remember how I said our players didn't make big plays when it was needed? Well, against Houston, there was a great 4th down stop by Jahdae Barron that saved us, along with a favorable spot. Against Kansas State, a 4th and goal stop prevented them from beating us in overtime. And against TCU, Quinn Ewers connected with A.D. Mitchell to convert a 3rd and 12 to escape in that one. Guys just made plays when they needed to be made. But Sark also deserved a ton of credit. He got better as a coach from a game management perspective. That's kind of why we were blowing all those leads. Everyone knows about Sark's offensive mind, especially when developing a script for the opposition in the early stages of games. His problem was when the script ran out or when teams adjusted to his script, he didn't seem to have the right answers in order to keep things going in a positive direction. His feel for the game was iffy in many instances in his first 2 years, but in 2023, we really saw him take control with his play calling. We went through so much adversity with the season as well. Quinn Ewers missed a couple games with injury, but we still kept the offense afloat while he was out. Our Doak Walker type player in Jonathan Brooks tears his ACL, but the running game puts together some of their best performances all season long. How this team bounced back over and over again was a sight to see and something I haven't seen before as a younger Texas fan. The Horns finished strong by beating Texas Tech and Oklahoma State by a combined score of 106-28, finally putting that all gas to no breaks moniker to good use. Even though Texas lost in the playoffs to Washington, we fought all the way through the adversity we had. Even when we turned the ball over twice, even when we were stopping ourselves with penalties, it took a stop on the last play from Washington in order to survive in that game. Some of the bad habits we did perform onto display for the most part this season were exposed in that Washington game, and I think that's going to be the next step in the development of this program. Can we get better in season as things go along? There's already a baseline of how good we can be, but every team has question marks during the season, right? Whether it's a quarterback, whether it's a position group, safeties, whether it's game management, clock management stuff, third down, red zone stuff killed us all year. Can we get better at certain things during the course of the season? I think that's the next step for Steve Sarkisian and his development as a coach. And hopefully our players that are younger that are going to be starting next year can take the mantle and take what they learned as being backups this year. I think Texas has built a great foundation for things to come in the SEC. The development at the line of scrimmage was absolutely paramount. The competitive depth and sheer talent will carry the program moving forward, not to mention all the transfers we're getting. Also, the younger guys, like I said, are going to get more experience. They now have learned how to win and now have learned to be leaders with all the guys that we've had over the past couple years, even though we have struggled. You know, guys like Bijan, Roshan, Christian Jones, DeMarvin Overshown, Jalen Ford, Jahdae Barron, all these guys, Tavondre Sweat. Those guys have set examples, and I couldn't be more grateful for them helping Texas come back to life. Now, y'all let me know how y'all feel about Texas's program at this moment in time. Are they back? Was this a one-year thing, perfect storm? What other things do the program needs to get better at going into the SEC? What are you expecting in the SEC? Let me know all those things. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe as well. And this is Jimmy from Just the Facts. Horns, hook 'em.